Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Home Alone. So, going into this film, I don't know how really valid my opinion upon this movie really is. Because, really looking at this movie, it's most of the time a go to movie that eventually people watch regardless every single Christmas period of time. Whether you're saying that Christmas is probably to be November, because really after Halloween's over it's basically just like, hey, put out all the Christmas stuff, because that's really what it is. So also we have it to where this movie could be someone's favorite movie of all time or favorite Christmas movie of all time. So what is really my opinion about this movie? uh, to really just say anything besmirching a film that might honestly be a movie that like has not the best quality to it now. Really looking at it, there's several times where you can kind of pick through this film and just be like, okay, that's goofy, all right, that's a goofy part of this film, and so on and so forth. But you can still enjoy a part of this movie where really just the thugs end up just getting hurt or beaten up or outsmarted by a young child. And so really that's to be the real pull of this film, is people will continue to go into it just because it's a young child outsmarting two thugs. And so you just can't wait till the obstacle course run that these guys are going to have to forcibly go into at some point in this film. So, and plus everything that happens before that is just irrelevant, because you're just like, hey man, I want to fast forward it to the part where these guys just start having to forcibly slip and trip and fall and whatever over one another, or just any number of things are to play out. So, with that said, the funny thing about this movie is possibly how many numerous times that Home Alone is actually probably said in this film. Because I don't know how many times that they had probably said the name of this film in the film. And I thought that that was interesting. Just oh, hey, I didn't count it off. I didn't rattle off the number. Let me know in the comments below if you have seen this movie recently and you had counted how many numerous times they had said Home Alone and Home Alone. So yeah, I can say that there is a part to this movie that has rewatchability, but I would probably never go on again to try and watch this movie in its completion, where we have kind of the McAllisters all going off to France for whatever goofy reason that they decide to do that, because this family is to just not only just this family, no, they have to have their whole family, 30 just random people that are all just in a house, where I just have to question, are all these people related? None of these people all look related, but I guess they are for whatever reason. So, and so they're all going off to France, and so it seems that both Peter and Kate are to seemingly be well off, because they are to afford first class, and then all their kids end up going and they're in coach flying off to France, that they're really just gonna not be spending all that much of time there, but hey, just enjoy the ride, right? Enjoy the experience, right? So if you hear a ding, my phone is about to die. That's what happens when you rapidly in concession try to start a video off and it's just not going the way you want. And plus also you get a phone where battery life isn't a real true important thing to it. So it like you have to just kind of clutch onto the battery life for dear life, so to speak. So the funny thing that I always go into about this movie is there's a lot of times where I would kind of reference this movie called Chud. And funny that I'd say that because Daniel Stern and John Hurd were in that film, and I would always say, like, yeah, like the two guys from Home Alone. Now that I'm watching this movie and I'm reviewing this film, like I can recommend Chud to some people because two people from Home Alone are in that film. So so the teeing up version of Home Alone, we really need to. A kid is to be left by his lonesome, and so this kid decides to do any number of things, causing anarchy because he is to be basically home alone where he gets to do whatever he wants. And so he bizarrely is to just consistently slap aftershave upon his face and be like, ah, the whole twice of this film. And hence when you get the you don't get him like really scared about anything to where he's doing that. Like you just have him consistently slapping his face after he's to have aftershave, and that's the whole expression of the film. But like I don't know why they just connected that to just like maybe there was a thing where the kid did the face at certain other parts of this movie, but they just kept the whole shaving thing and him kind of having this aftershave like thing. Maybe they just kept that part where like maybe they were like using this whole like that thing was maybe in any number of parts of this movie, but whichever. Anyways, so kid is to, of course, be at home, but these thieves are to plan to go around from home to home to ask these people, hey, like, what are you guys doing for Christmas? Are you going to be out of town? Because I can't wait to go through and steal through your house while you're away, not having you know that this is all going on. So Kevin is trying to thwart these two thieves from trying to break into his house. And so that leads to this obstacle course that is to be presented in this movie. And it's kind of like a fun thing in the sequel to have these characters come back, because in the sequel, you have it to where the characters are just like, well, hey, we're expecting like paint buckets and all this kinds of stuff. And so we have the characters that are this time around like prepared a little bit more to avoid things because they know better, and so they're kind of expecting stuff to happen now, which makes for an interesting sequel where like very rarely do you get like everyone coming back for the sequel, but on top of that, like you don't always get like the second time around we know better kind of thing. It's always, even in the sequel, like people fall for the exact same things. But anyways, so really it's just the build up to the obstacle course and nothing else matters. So with that said, let's just go into that double five time territory, because I think let's just go into spoilers. Let's just talk about this and get out of our way to eventually saying that if people are interested in any of these other Home Alone movies, I will go on to review them at some point. But like if I don't even care about this first Home Alone movie, I don't know how I'm going to even feel about any of these other ones once they like diminish in quality over whatever, because they're just going to keep continuing to just pop these bad boys out. So without a doubt, let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into it. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time I can spoil this movie. Like I don't care for this film. Like I don't really like this film, but I can still like at a point, rewatch this film. Is really what I would want to say. It's just like, don't care for whatever this film delivers, with the exclusion of the obstacle course, thugs getting hurt. Then I can rewatch that over and over and over again. People yelling, screaming, bloody murder, whatever. I can watch that. So let's get into spoilers. This is on Disney Plus. If I haven't said it, because they have all the Disney Plus Home Alone films, because they cranked out a new one. Some, however new or relevant that's really going to be. So let's go into it. Let's go into spoilers. So very beginning of the film, everybody is hustling and bustling. There's Joe Pesci as his police officer going and asking if anybody's to actually live in this house who's to be a adult. And so there's to be a billion people all like walking through this house, just like, yeah, I'm here, I'm in the house. I may have a line somewhere in this movie. And so we go on and have all these people just hustling and bustling through this house. They deliver pizza, and the delivery guy is asking for like $100 and some odd dollars, and it's taking them like forever to like pay the pizza man. How long is it going to take for Joe Pesci to get the owner of this house to like go and like ask him like, hey, what's going on? Like, as if, like, I'm sorry, the one thing that I find fishy about this film is we have like just some guy coming in, and I don't care. Whoa, Jesus. It gets me every time. Some sound that goes on in my phone always just jumps the crap out of me for whatever reason. Jumps the crap out of me. It scares me because I'm just like not expecting it to go off, even though I should have expected it to go off. It's basically like a toaster when you're really close to it. So Joe Pesci as this police officer is to ask John Hurd's character Peter, like, hey, since Christmas is to be nearby, like we want to make sure that everybody's to like have the most secure homes and stuff like that. So what kind of security you guys using? And he's starting to rattle off these things, blah 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 blah. So Peter is say, yeah, like I have this kind of security, yeah, I have this, yeah, that. So Joe Pesci's character Harry's like, okay, great. Like, so like I just want to double check with you guys that you're being secure for the holidays. And so we have Kate, who ends up going by and is to go on and pay the pizza man, because everyone else is just scrambling and getting this pizza. And so the guy's like, dude, I need $120 from somebody. So Kate gives this guy the money for the pizza, and then Kate is to go and talk to this police officer. It was kind of funny because Peter was thinking like, well, am I arrested for something? It's like, oh no, I'm just asking about the security things. But then when Kate is to talk to Joe Pesci or Harry about the security things, like Harry's just mentioned, it's like, oh no, well, I've already talked to your husband about the security of your house. And then Harry is to just leave. I'm like, why wouldn't, after he talked to Peter, why wouldn't have Harry had just left? Like, was he just, like, was Harry just interested in the interactions that are going on with this house? But we have where Kate is to mention that they're going off to France soon. So, like, I guess Harry was just hanging around to see if anyone was to mention that they're going out of town soon, so he could take full advantage of that. So we have where everybody is going and scrambling for pizza, and so Kevin, of course, is to ask like, "Hey, Where's my cheese pizza? And you know what? In all honesty, if you're not a fan of a certain kind of topping of pizza, you could do this thing called pick stuff off. I would do it all the time. Like, normally I would probably not be a sausage kind of guy, so I would take the sausage off. And I would just be like, like, okay, this is something that I would viably eat. Or this is something that I could consume. Because, yeah, I might not like sausage, or I might not like green peppers, or some goofy thing that someone is to weirdly add onto a pizza. And I'd finally tried pineapple onto a pizza, and I'm like, okay, I don't understand the reason why people love pineapple on pizza. No offense to somebody that consumes it and thoroughly enjoys it. Like, I don't know, like, I would just be like, what's the big deal? What's the huge difference? Um, like, there's to be this one pizza that I tried that had like green peppers and pineapple on it. I'm like, okay, what? Like, it, like, they both kind of canceled one another out. And, but I think they also had like pepperoni on it. But, anyways, to each their own. So, we have Buzz, of course, who, before this moment, had went with Kevin into his room and was to tell him a story about a guy who is to be called Marley, who is to supposedly have these dead bodies or something in his garbage can that is to have salt in it. So Buzz is to come up with this goofy story about this guy that is to walk around with these dead bodies that are to be in this trash can with salt in it. I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, whoever came up with the story that this guy was to deliver, I'm like, wow, just really a true legitimate thought process of, of that whole story. But I don't know, it's just like the goofiest things that they put into this film. So yeah, everybody fear Marley for whatever reason until we find out that he's a genuinely nice guy who actually saves Kevin in the end of this film because he's that nice of a guy, even though you should fear him. So, now back to Buzz and the pizza. So, Kevin is, of course, to always have some problem with Buzz, to lead to Kevin getting either grounded or some kind of something. So Kevin is to, of course, push over Buzz, which all of a sudden has this chain reaction of events where certain pop or cola or Pepsi is to get spilt, and Uncle Frank is to push his chair back, which almost is to crush or crunch. What is his name here? The other Fuller, the kid who is to supposedly wet his bed if he is to have certain beverages at a certain time of night. To where Kevin is like, I'm not going to sleep next to that kid because he'll wet the bed. Like, I know because he's actually my brother. I know better. And it's kind of funny when we see Fuller in this movie because Fuller consistently has these like eye things where he's like like as if he knows the camera's there, but like he shouldn't know the camera's there. But like Fuller is just like yeah, like I'm on camera, yeah. So after causing this whole chain reaction where everybody is to immediately blame Kevin and is to have all these kind of like horrible things to say about him, like, oh, you're a butthead, Kevin, or all this kind of. So everybody is to turn against Kevin, even though technically, if Buzz didn't like fall backwards to start this chain reaction of things, so but whatever, right? So Kate is go and grab Kevin and say that the only person that's really being difficult here is Kevin out of everyone else. So with all of his family all having to be here all simultaneously at the same time and also going on to France all at the same time, it's miraculous, right? So Kevin, I guess, is to be forced to go to bed early, I guess, without dinner, because Kevin doesn't have his cheese pizza that is just for him. So Kevin goes off to bed, and before Kevin goes off to bed, he is to mention that he, one, wants to live alone, and two, that he doesn't want Fuller to sleep with him, so Fuller won't wet the bed. And so Kate is to say, well, I'm going to have Fuller sleep somewhere else. And then uh, like Kevin goes on to just kind of have some things to say about this family, and that he like doesn't want to be with them anymore, and so kind of wishing them away. So the whole family is just supposedly sleeping because maybe a thunderstorm happened where it knocked out their power, because for some goofy reason, like their clocks were all set to like a time of which that seemed like their clocks weren't set at all. So they wake up and they realize, oh my god, we overslept. And so now everybody and their brother is just scrambling into this house, whether it seems like they're related to somebody or not. It doesn't matter at this point. It's just like, hey guys, just all scramble around and look all busy because we got time to kill. So everybody's scrambling off, and so everybody is to just go and make it to this car. And we weirdly have this one kid who goes on to try and go into this vehicle and asking this guy a number of questions about about the car and about this and that. And so this kid is to be, of course, so small that he is to, of course, look like Kevin from behind. So all of a sudden, all the kids end up getting in, like in front of the car, and so I guess the oldest out of all of them is to go and start counting all of the kids, and so the one girl ends up mistaking Kevin for some other kid who, after they count all this off, this kid's like, okay, we'll see you guys later, bye. And then he goes and runs off because he doesn't live here. So everybody gets in their car, their prospective car, and they drive off. So supposedly Kevin was to have his mother come up with something that Kevin was going to have for luggage for this whole trip. And so I guess Kate completely forgot about that, as well as forgetting to even get Kevin. So they go through and they make it on the plane right on time, and they're like, oh, thank God. So everybody's scrambling onto the plane, and so we have it where, like, Kate is to just be asking Peter, it's like, well, hey, like, Did I forget something? Is the coffee on? Is the oven on? Like, was there something that we forgot about? And then all of a sudden, we just have Kate who's like, Kevin! And so now they're like trying to think how they can like call Kevin. But we also conveniently find out that I guess the phone lines on this home were to be disconnected for X amount of days. And so, like, Kate had no never mind about that because she's like, well, we're going to be leaving for France anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Well, I guess it doesn't. And I guess. So, what happens is when the family is to go and make it to France, immediately we have Kate who is to ask that, like, hey guys, like, go on and try to figure out if you have any phone numbers to give me that I could call any neighbors that could probably go and check in on Kevin. And so they're kind of scrambling to figure out how they can, like, have Kevin be looked after without them having to have anyone go back home. So they're trying to go and see if there's a available flight to uh, to get back to Chicago because that's where most of this movie is supposedly filmed. And so it seems that there isn't one right away. And so now Kate is just trying to like beg certain people that are on certain flights going to Chicago, I guess, to like, hey man, like, I'll give you my rings, I'll give you my earrings, I'll give you anything. And so, luckily, Kate is to find a couple that is willing to give up their ticket uh, for Kate, I think, to make it to New York and then have to go from New York to Chicago, I think is how she gets there. But it's really just a mood point, right? So let's complete the Kate story, but then we'll go to Kevin and like his journey through his time of being without family, and then we'll get to him uh, making it to see his mother again and be like, oh hey yeah, like I guess you guys are real after all. So because Kevin had wished that he had never had any other family and then they had all had just disappeared one day. So Kate is to, of course, be at this one airport and she bumps into John Candy's character, who's be a guy named Gus, who is to have supposedly been a famous polka player that was to have all these great polka hits that were to be popular sometime around the 70s. Sure. And so, like, this guy is to rattle off all these famous polka songs that were famous around the 70s, supposedly. So, Kate is like, well, is there a point to this? And so, Gus is to just be like, well, yeah, like, it seems like you need to get to Chicago, and like, hey, we're going to Milwaukee, so like we can more than likely help you out. So Kate is like, oh, okay, great. So we have these characters go on, and they're going on this tour, and the whole entire time, like they're playing music while they're getting their way home. So now let's go with the Kevin story. So Kevin, of course, the very next day had woken up. His hair is all disheveled, like like he's just looking like he's like, what? Huh? So Kevin is going through the house and is to just call for people, and no one is to answer. So Kevin's like, okay, like I guess my wish came true. So Kevin is to consistently go and like tease the fact that he's doing some horrible things and no one is coming to stop him. So Kevin goes off and is to go and eat ice cream and no one is to say anything. Kevin is to go and watch a rated R movie and no one is to say anything. Kevin is to go into Buzz's room and no one is to say anything. And so now Kevin is to go off and just start thumbing through uh, Buzz's room. And at one point, like Kevin is to see supposedly some Playboy. And then he's like, like people with no clothes on. Ugh. Like, so Kevin chucks that aside. So Kevin starts playing around with Buzz's stuff. At some point, he is to shoot this BB gun and fire away at some of these things. And so, at one point, Kevin had to go down to the basement where there's this furnace that is to horrify Kevin. But when Kevin is forced to do laundry, he then is to face the fear of this furnace and just like, you know what, shut up. And so the furnace is like, ooh, all right. Like, okay, I won't scare him anymore. So Kevin is to, of course, watch this one movie that I guess doesn't even really actually exist. And so Kevin is to consistently watch Merry Christmas, you filthy animal freaking film. Like, you would have thought at some point that someone would have came up with that movie or created that film after this movie came out just to be like, hey, here it is. Like, here's the thing. Like, here's the movie that came from out of the Home Alone film. Like, you would have thought that that would have actually been a thing, but meh, guess not. So, keep your change, you filthy animal. So, how does Kevin come up with money? Because Kevin goes on and is to order pizza, is to go grocery shopping, and so it seems that I guess Buzz is to have some life savings like saved up. So Kevin goes on and is to take this money and is to use it so that way he can get a cheese pizza made just for him and also go on and do some grocery shopping and get milk and certain kind of things. And so Kevin is to go and do, of course, grocery shopping. And so it's kind of funny because, like, Kevin is to approach this like an adult. And he's like, hey, like, how are those TV dinners? And so the cashier is just like, well, like it's like, well, I'll try it. I'll try them out. And so like we had this kind of like funny banter where like this girl's like scanning through things and Kevin's like, well, hey, I have a coupon. Like I just got a coupon. I just clipped it out. It's like, what an adult approach to this like whole grocery thing. It's like really good for Kevin. And so the cashier is to ask Kevin, it's like, well, hey, is like your parents around? And like Kevin is like, well, do you think that I'd be grocery shopping by myself? No, my parents are around. So Kevin at one point also is to realize that he does not have a toothbrush. So he goes to this store to try and buy a toothbrush, and he asks the woman behind the counter. He's like, "Well, is this a real legitimate toothbrush that's like it's been like approved that like people have like 9 doctors out of 10 can approve this toothbrush being used?" And so now this person is to go on and ask whether this is a legitimate toothbrush or not. And so Kevin is to bump into Marley, and he gets scared, and so he runs off. And so the people at the store are to have one of the I guess the box boys or something like that spotting this kid, and so the kid tries to run after him, but then all of a sudden this kid is to randomly point to this, like, hey, police officer, like, hey, shoplifter. And so all of a sudden the cop is to now chase after Kevin's character. And so Kevin is weirdly just like sliding his way through all these people, I guess, on this ice rink of sorts to evade this police officer and avoid being caught stealing, I guess. So we also have this one point where, because Kevin is assumed there's no like real rules, right? So he is, of course, to have a sled that he goes and puts on his stairwell and goes sliding down these stairs and then sliding through his front door. And I'm just like, man, like, I would never in a million years do this kind of thing because I would just be so worried of hurting myself. But I guess for Kevin, he probably has like rubber limbs, right? So that just seems like so dangerous. But whatever, all right? But anyways, so we have a point where Kevin is to make his way back to his home to have these two wet bandit thieves going through and robbing some house. And so Kevin is to be accidentally walking right in front of this car, and these guys aren't really paying attention, and so they stop conveniently right in front of Kevin as he's almost going to get crushed by this car. And so they're like, oh, hey, kid, pay attention next time. So they are to say, like, you know what? Like, why does this kid look so familiar? And they're like, I don't know, but, like, follow him to wherever house he's going. Let's see what house he goes to. So they follow the kid, and they go to the house that he's in. They don't go inside of it, but they're like, yeah, let's go and let's, like, rob that house. And so, because supposedly the guy, Harry, remembers that, like, oh yeah, this family used to be a family out of town. They're going to, like, France or something. So they decide to want to go and break into this home. But then Kevin is to make this seem like there are people in this home having a party, and it's just a bunch of mannequins and a bunch of, like, cardboard cutouts all made to look like there's people actually in the home. And so, hilariously enough, we have both Marv and Harry just like, I thought, like, everybody was going on vacation. Like, maybe everyone's going to be gone tomorrow. And so, like, the very next day they head in there and they're like, where are all the people? Like, man, they were having such a banging party last night. Like, why is everyone weirdly gone now? Because, like, Kevin had to do all of that work to make it look like there was a party. So now we have Marv, who is to want to go to one part of this house to try to see if he can make his way in. And Kevin is to realize that. So if we hadn't played around with this when the pizza guy came and gave Kevin his pizza, and then we did the whole filthy animal thing and counting to 10 and, like, get the heck out of there and so on and so forth, leading this pizza man to run off because somebody's getting killed or he might be getting killed. So Marv is to go on and is to hear this line of dialogue between this this guy named Snakes and so on and so forth, that someone's getting blown away. And so Marv is to hear this story about these two guys haggling over things. And so Marv is to run back off to Harry and just be like, hey man, like someone was getting blown away in there. And Harry's like, wait a minute, is someone else working this house? Like, maybe we should go and like wait till these people like get out of here to see if they're like, if somebody had killed anybody, then like if someone asks us if somebody had died in this neighborhood, we can point them out, so that way we can kind of like get away with whatever we're doing and point out that this guy is some murderer. And Marvel's like, good idea. So nobody ends up ever coming out. So they're like, like maybe we keep getting swindled by this kid, and we're just gonna have to like go and get this kid at some point. So pushing on. So Kevin is to go off to this church, and so we have this church choir singing away, and so Marley is to go on and is to sit next to Kevin, and like Marley is like, well, hey, can I sit here? And Kevin's like, sure. So Marley is to immediately tell Kevin, it's like, well, I'm sure that you've probably heard stories about me through the neighborhood. None of it's true. Like, I'm a good guy. Like, hey, you can trust me. So Kevin's letting his guard down, and then Marley murders him. The movie ends, the thieves steal all the goods, and when when Peter and Kate and the whole family make it back home from France, everything's gone, and their kid's dead, and they're horrified. They're never going to leave their house again. You know what? That's, I think, the one thing that I can appreciate about, like, how certain movies could have ended, where we can always have this alternate version of a film. Like, I can honestly see at some points that, like, Home Alone could possibly have been built in a different way to be some kind of, like, horror film, where it doesn't turn out in the favor of the kid, or if anything, like, the kid could be, like, haunting this thing of a like kind of abandoned house where these kind of homeless guys are to be there, and this kid is to just like go after these kind of thugs and to try to hurt them and whatever. But it can go into that kind of style of a horror film. So, but anyways, backpedaling. So Marley did not kill, of course, Kevin, because this is a kids movie also. So Marley is to mention that he comes here so that way he can listen to his daughter, who is singing. I'm like, like, wouldn't they have probably have built this up that Kevin and this girl had probably gone on to be boyfriend and girlfriend probably at some point to just kind of full circle this movie? But whatever. So Marley is to only come here to see his daughter sing now because I guess he was to have a falling out with his son, and so now he can't really spend too much time with his granddaughter. And so Kevin's like, well, like, why don't you just square it up with your son and so you can see your granddaughter whenever you want? And Marley's like, well, I never thought about that. And so Kevin's like, well, why don't you just call him? Like, why don't you just kind of like have everything work out? Like, or work things out to just kind of like try to be family again. And Marley's like, well, that's a good idea. So, like, give him a call, see what happens. It's been so many years. Why not just figure something out? So Kevin is to go on, and I don't think we ever hear like how that whole like Marley situation resolved. But anyways, so so Kevin is to go and see Santa, and is to, of course, like realize, like Kevin is to realize that this isn't actually the legitimate Santa, but maybe this Santa can go and put a good word for Kevin to just ask him for like the real Santa for one like wish. And so of course this Santa's like, sure, hey kid, what do you want? So Kevin is to mention that all he really wants for Christmas is his family back. And like maybe not everybody, but like just like because there's to be the one uncle where he's like, like if Santa's busy, maybe not get that one, but everyone else, just bring them back. So Santa's like, okay, that's great, and so he ends up giving him some like Tic Tacs, for his trouble, because like, hey, like my elf took all the candy canes to her boyfriend, so like here's some Tic Tacs, like don't let it spoil your dinner. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is a growing kid. Like, I'm sure he can just eat anything. He ate a ton of ice cream earlier on in this movie. It is going to just ruin his dinner regardless. So, let's get into the obstacle course, the fun part of the film that everybody is to really just have the real key part of this movie and really have the holy crap. We're almost 50 minutes into this movie. So, let's get into it. So, the obstacle course. So Kevin is to go home and realize that it's like, hey man, I'm gonna go and defend my house. And so Kevin is to set up his house to have all these things so that way if these people are to break in, Kevin is to have this plan. So these guys are to go on and go to a door of Kevin's house and just say like, hey, how about we just kind of knock on the door? Maybe this kid is stupid enough to just let us in, because we'll just say that we're Santa and and we're here to give him a gift or something. So they go into the door and they say like, hey kid, we're Santa. So Kevin is to have this BB gun and is to shoot Harry's character to have him drop to his knees. And so Marv ends up sticking his head into the doggy door, and Kevin shoots Marv in the face, but like there isn't enough, I guess, BB gun like stuff to like really do some severe damage here. So they decide to start going into certain parts of this home and just try to see if they can make their way in. So, uh, so we have one part where I think Marv is to try to make it through this one window, but that's right next to the tree, and the tree has crushed ornaments, and so Marv ends up hurting his foot. So Marv goes into one other like section of this home, and like we have these guys that are all like slipping and sliding because uh Kevin had purposely like put water all over these spots to make it even like more icy and slippery and whatever. So these guys are slipping and sliding all the way to these doors. And so at one point Harry is to go and try to grab onto this door and get his hand severely burnt by it. And so Harry ends up going to this other door, and he ends up opening it to have this torch thing blast over his head to have Harry rush into a part of snow to just bury his head into snow. And so now we just have Harry who just has this burnt part of his head. So uh so Marv ends up going from this basement to make his way up this uh up to uh a upstairs part of this house. So Marv is to go up these stairs, and these stairs are filled with some kind of weird, sticky tar like substance. So Marv loses his shoes, he loses his socks, and then we go on and have him having just his bare feet. And so Kevin is to put a nail in one of the steps, and of course Marv conveniently steps on this nail and then falls down these stairs. And so he's like, "Good God!" So Marv tries to come up with another way to make it through this house, and so at some point Marv is to get a iron to the face and burn his face. And so it gets to where both Marv and Harry are to finally make it into the house after all this rigmarole. And so now Kevin is to just be like, "Hey guys, like, come and get me. Are you thirsty for more?" Because these guys are just slip over these like Hot Wheels and they fall over and these like fall right on these things. I'm like, good grief. So they go on and they go up these stairs, and so we had them go up these stairs to just get hit with these paint cans, and so they end up kind of getting knocked out because of that. Either one of them fall over on top of one another and so on and so forth. But they get up the stairs, and so what happens is that Kevin is to have this little uh string that these guys, I guess, are to trip on. And so both of them make it up these stairs, and so Marv ends up going and grabbing on to the kid, or Kevin, and so Kevin is to go and grab this tarantula, and which is actually, I guess, a legitimate actual tarantula that they use in this movie for the whole scene of it. So Kevin drops this spider on Marv, and he screams bloody murder. He's like, "Ah, ah!" So Marv is to drop this spider on Harry because he just tries to like brush it off. And so now Marv is going to forcibly hit Harry so he can get the spider off, and it just hurts Harry. So what is to transpire here is Kevin is to go from, I believe, his room to his treehouse from this kind of like wire like thing. And so that is to have this like bike handle on it. And so Kevin is to go and transition to his treehouse. And so now both Harry and Marv are trying to climb using this rope to make it to this treehouse. And Kevin conveniently is to cut this rope while these guys are climbing on it. And they smack into this house and they fall over. So Kevin is to transition to one of his neighbors' homes and is to desperately go on and try to find if anyone is there. So both Harry and Marv are to find this kid in this other house, and it's like, oh, okay, well now we're gonna get even, kid. Now we're gonna have you get blowtorched, and we're gonna have you get an iron to the face, and we're gonna torture you and like do what you did to us. And so all of a sudden, Marley goes in and shovels these guys in the head and knocks them out. And so Marley is to grab this kid and is to tell him, like, okay, you're going home. So the police is called, these thugs are to be arrested, and so now Kevin is to just like look at Harry and just be like, hey, like Merry Christmas, you're going to prison for I don't know how long, but like see you in a number of years when we do the sequel. So the police get hauled away. Kevin goes on and is to meet his mother. Uh, but after Kevin is to meet his mother, all of a sudden the rest of the family all arrives. And so Kate is like, how did you guys all arrive here? And Peter is like, well, we took the flight that you refused to take. Like, we took it, we got here by roughly the exact same time that she did. So they all got home, and so Buzz is just kind of appreciative that Kevin was to be able to not burn the house down. And so, but everybody is now asking, it's like, well, hey, like, what are we gonna eat? Like, there's nothing in here. There's like I'm sure like we don't have any milk, we don't have no nothing. And Kevin's like, no, I went grocery shopping. Like, I got a bunch of stuff. Excuse me. And so they're like, wait a minute, you went grocery shopping? Like, you can't even tie your shoes. Like, how did you even go grocery shopping? So, like, everybody's just go and check and realize that Kevin, I guess, had gone on and done some grocery shopping. But then Buzz, I guess, is to go into his room and just be like, Kevin, you're dead. Like, because, like, Buzz had his, like, room ransacked so that way Kevin could do all these things because these thugs all showed up. So, really, I think at the tail end of this movie, we just have kind of Marley that's just, I think, kind of reunite with his granddaughter and just have this kind of feel good kind of moment. So, with that said, I think that's all that really happens for the rest of this movie. I think if there's anything that I forgot to cover, there's probably not going to be a rebuttal unless I go into Home Alone 2 for whatever reason. If it seems that any number of these movies are probably popular, you'll see and review another one of them because I'll probably list every single one of the Home Alone movies in this one to just kind of see or sift through and just kind of see if any one of these are actually popular, which there may be one or another. So thank you anybody for watching all these. I really do appreciate it. I always say that, but I do have that same always kind of feeling. So that said, I think I'm going to get the heck out of here. I think I covered everything. I think I covered also anything that I would just want to say about this film. But either way, this is a Christmas film, so either way, it's kind of enjoy this movie for whatever it is. Some people might just like this film because people get hurt in it, and that's, I guess, the fun thing of it all. Um, Honestly, like, we have Macaulay Culkin that had done a number of things for Cinemassacre, like going and doing like the whole video of him talking about the Home Alone video games and stuff like that, and like him going and doing the video about him talking about Big Trouble in Little China, and then also him going on to like Joe Rogan and doing an interview about that and so on and so forth. Like right around the time where he was kind of coming back into just doing all these interviews and whatever for a short brief time, and he just went off to just go on and do his own thing. Like, it would be interesting to just kind of see like Macaulay Culkin just going and doing like a movie here and there, but like I think like if we were to have gotten him to do a film, like it would have had to have been at like the perfect time. And plus also it would have to have been like a very specific movie, I think, to really just create real legitimate interest. But with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.